Good morning you guys, it's Karen and I wanted to do a video for you on how to make the grooming process easier for you or easier for your dog, to be honest with you. That's the main purpose. This channel is all about making dogs' lives better. So if you are grooming your dog at home, whether that be bathing, styling, cutting, just doing a little face trim, whatever, these are tips that will make it a more pleasurable experience for your dog. I've got my notes here, so if you see me looking down, that's why. I've split it into 4 groups: bathing, training, drying, and kind of general, and most of the things fall under the general category. So we'll start with bathing. So for bathing, the number one thing I would say is try to avoid getting water in the dog's mouth and nose. And that's easier said than done, because especially with longer haired dogs, you want to try and wash their beard, you want to try and wash their muzzle. But if you get water in their nose and mouth, because of the water running, you may not hear them sort of making noises that suggest it's irritating their airways, and that can definitely happen. The easiest way to do it is to use a face cloth, so that you are, you know, squeezing the cloth out and you're not using as much water. It's not an easy way to do it, and then there's not an easy way to rinse, like the moustache. So I do have to make sure I use a shower head, unfortunately, or use a flannel and squeeze the water over. What I tend to do is just put my finger over Watson's nostrils and hold underneath his mouth and quickly go over it and then quickly let go. It's not the perfect way, there is no perfect way, but when you're putting the shower on the beard, just make sure that he's got his mouth closed and perhaps hold it closed just for a minute, because obviously they need to breathe, but so that you're not putting water down their throat. And then, like I said, when you do the top bit, maybe just put your fingers across their nose so that you don't get water in their mouth and nose. With the eyes and ears, you can use cotton balls to put in the ears, and that will stop any water getting in the ear canal, and that's a really good thing, because if a dog gets water in his ears anytime during the bathing process, it's probably going to put him off for next time, and it will make him more scared. And then with the eyes, just be careful, I would say, and use a shampoo that is, you know, made for dogs, so that it's usually made to not cause irritation to the eyes. And also I've trained Watson to put his head back like that, so that when I'm washing his kind of fringe, I guess you'd call it, nothing gets in his eyes, so just be really careful about that. The final thing about bathing is treats, and you'll probably hear me say this all the way through, and even if you're somebody that doesn't like treating your dogs, you could use their kibble. That's not really a treat as such, it's just giving them their food at a different time, but I know that some people are very strict about not wanting to use treats. But if you don't mind using treats, you just work out how much of their kibble you need to take away and give them, allocate an amount of treats. I do that because obviously I'm doing training with Watson, so I need to use treats. But treats are something that it's going to make a good connection with the process. So if you've got a new puppy and you're going to give him a bath, take him into the bathroom, give him a treat. Put him in the bath, give him a treat. Turn the water on, give him a treat. You know, for the first time, you want them to associate the whole process with good things. And so when they hear that shower being turned on, they'll think, oh, treat. They won't think of it as something bad. I treat Watson probably about the halfway mark, just at the point where I've put, I have to put a special shampoo around Watson's beard and muzzle, and because that may get into his mouth and give him a horrible taste, I do give him treats at that point, and I also need to leave the shampoo on anyway, and it just means he's not going to get a horrible taste in his mouth. Okay, next on to drying, and I have 2 things to tell you about this. The first one is, if you feel you need to use a blow dryer, you can buy something called a Happy Hoodie. And when I had my grooming business, the Happy Hoodie was just brilliant for dogs that did not enjoy blow drying, which is most dogs. It's just like a sweatband, and you put it over their ears. It holds their ears tight to their head. So, I mean, it looks very, very funny on them, but it stops them being scared of the noise. The noise is very loud, and if you remember that they've got better hearing than us, the vibrations and the sound, etc., is just overwhelming for them. So you dull that down an awful lot by putting on a Happy Hoodie. Obviously, you'll need to take it off to do around their face, etc. So a Happy Hoodie is my first tip. But secondly, I would say that I don't feel there is often a need to dry them. I think that it's very rare you actually need to blow dry a dog, other than in the professional salon, of course, because you can't send a dog home wet, and also perhaps poodles, because you need to blow dry a poodle's coat straight if you don't want it to be curly, and if it's curly, you know, not straight, but you know, to get it sort of fluffy. But if you don't blow dry a poodle's coat, it's probably a bit harder to manage. Anyway, we have learnt with Watson to bathe him at night and then put a robe on him, or bathe him in the day when we know he's really tired, he's had a couple of walks or he's had a good play with his friends and he's going to be sleeping for quite some time, and then we put a dog robe on. I'm pretty sure most of you will know what I mean, but this is the dog robe that we use, or one of, because I have actually made a couple myself. They're that good. I had, you know, clients coming in and I would put the robe on them and give them a little break whilst I was clearing up. It takes so much out of their coat, so much water out of their coat, and they're practically dry. And even with dogs such as my Watson, who has a long, thick, curly, wavy coat, it doesn't obviously dry their legs and it doesn't dry their tail and their ears. The tail I find dries pretty well. What you're left with normally at the end of the day is a dog, if you've got a dog with long hair, is a dog with wet ears and wet paws. But I don't think that that's a huge issue unless they're going out for a big muddy walk again, and then the mud will stick to it a bit more. So in that case, you might want to blow dry off their feet and their ears, but at least it's had hours to dry. So like I said, I really don't think that you need to blow dry your dog at all. I think it's much kinder to them to just put a robe on and let them sleep. And, you know, make sure that you've got the heating on appropriately. I know Watson is a dog that gets cold when he's wet, but the rest of the time he's really hot. So I sort of check on him a few times to make sure he's not shivering or anything like that. And sometimes I even put a little blanket over him. But I think it's a much kinder way, and it's a much less laborious way, isn't it? Okay, on to general items, and like I said, this is where the most tips are, so I'll try to be as quick as I can. The first one is not to wear perfume. It's a small thing, but it's a very big impact for a dog. And so by general, I mean when you're bathing, when you're drying, when you're styling them. If you've got a day in mind to do that, try and remember and not put a strong perfume on in the morning, or not put any perfume on at all would be better. Because again, remember they've got a huge sense of smell, a lot more than ours, and that could be something that it could give them a headache, it could irritate the lining of their nose if you're being that close to them, you know, and you are very close to them obviously when you're doing all these things. So that would apply also to air fresheners. Like in the room you're going to do it in, don't leave a plug-in in there, one of these plug-in air fresheners. Try not to use products that are hugely perfumed. Now I know that some people want their dog to smell lovely afterwards, and that is of course possible, and even what I would do was use a spray, but I would do it the very last thing that I did before they left that room, so that they could run around and the smell would dissipate in the air and they wouldn't be in a room with a concentrated strong smell of fragrance. Next is give them lots of breaks. I think that if it's something that goes in short bursts, it's something that becomes more acceptable to them. If they go up on that table and know they're going to be there for 2 to 3 hours without moving, then that will be what they remember the experience as. If you give them lots of little breaks, so just pop them down and say, do you want to drink a water, treat, let them out in the garden and quickly run up and down with them with a ball, and then take them back inside. It gives everybody a break, and that makes it a much nicer experience for them. The next one's a little bit radical, and it's doggy music, but there is specific music that is made for dogs. And again, I would put music on when I had my grooming business here in the house, and I do think it made a difference, because it's something I started doing for the dogs I knew that were nervous, and I felt that it did help, so I started doing it for all dogs just to make it a nice atmosphere for them. It's normally classical type music, so it's nice to have on, and even for yourself it will help you you know, feel calmer, feel in that kind of calm space that you need to be for your dog. The next one is kind of obvious, but not everybody thinks of it. Make sure that it's after a walk, a long walk. If the dog is tired, you're going to have much less fighting, and it will be much more relaxed. The dog will be relaxed enough to put up with things that perhaps if it had a huge amount of energy, it wouldn't. So like I said, it's not going to fight back. It's going to sort of relax into things much better. But also, you've not got the problem of the dog needing to go to the bathroom. So if you make sure all the business is done, then that's not something that will make them uncomfortable, and again, they will associate with that. Next, I've said to start and end with a massage, which is, you know, a lot more work for you, but I'm not talking about a half-an-hour massage. And for Watson, who doesn't like massages, I do a scratchy massage, if you like. I give him scratches on his neck, and I say to him, do you want a scratchy scratch? So one of the things I've done to get him to the point where now, instead of him running away from the table as he used to, he will come to the table and he's eager to get on the table, is I'll say to him, do you want a scratchy scratch? And we put him up and I give him a scratchy scratch. And it doesn't matter if that's for 1 minute, but I just give him a little scratch, and he, you know, sits and loves it. And then he gets a treat, and then that's him associated with that table good things. Then I start the grooming. Again, at the end, he's probably itchy from all the hairs. I just give him a little scratch just to end it in a nice way, so that that's the kind of last memory he has from the grooming process. I've said here antihistamine. This works for Watson, and this will only apply to you if you are happy using over-the-counter drugs for your dog. It's a totally personal opinion. You know, Piriton is something that is given by vets for dogs, but it's up to you whether or not you want to do that. But the reason I say antihistamine is because, like us after a haircut, you know, that feeling of having hairs everywhere, particularly if you have dogs with allergies, I think that it makes them itch more. I've noticed that with Watson, so I make sure I give him an antihistamine. I mean, Watson is on Piriton anyway for when he is gnawing his paws and whatnot, but I just make sure that before the groom he's added in antihistamine, a Piriton, so it's in his system and he doesn't get too itchy. Next I've put Restraint, and you might think, well, a Restraint is not going to make the experience better for the dog, but it actually will. You can get Restraints for the bath where you stick them on the wall. They don't have the best reviews. I haven't tried one. I'm tempted to try one actually, because Watson does like to turn around in the bath and try to get his head away from me. He doesn't like his muzzle being washed, and he does actually have lip folds, and a reason why he doesn't like that. But before, when I had the grooming salon, I had my own grooming bath, and it did have a Restraint, and it was much easier to wash him because we didn't have that dance of him turning around constantly. And so I would say, from the point of view of length of time, it will make it more enjoyable for them, because you will be able to do every part of them quicker. You won't have to constantly be waiting for them to turn around to get the other foot, turn around to get the other front foot, turn around to get the other ear. Most dogs will constantly move in the bath, and so having that Restraint will make it easier. Also, on Restraints, I'm not just talking about the bath. With the table, you would be best to have two Restraints, a double Restraint, one that goes under their tummy or like the back of their legs, and one that goes around their neck. But please only do this if you have planned correctly and you don't need to answer the door and leave them with one around them or leave them on the table. Make sure you take off those Restraints if you so much as walk away, you know, even to put the kettle on, even if they're within distance. Don't do that, because it can be so dangerous. I also wouldn't ever recommend just using the neck Restraint. I would also use both, because there has been incidents where dogs have broken their neck from trying to jump off a table. Or not try and succeeding, and then that would snap their neck. But it is really useful to have both ends done, because if you hold the back end up, it means they won't keep trying to sit down when you're doing their tail or their bum or their legs, and that will make it a faster experience. And again, they'll surrender because they know, well, I can't sit down, so I just need to let it be done. And they'll get used to that feeling as well. The first time that you ever groom your dog and put them on the table, so you've put them on the table, you've given them a treat for getting on the table, you've given them a little scratch or a little massage, you then need to pick up a foot, and when you pick up that foot, hold it as firmly as you can, obviously without hurting them. And the first thing they're going to do is try and pull back like that, and you want to make sure you just hold it and do not let them pull away. Again, this might sound like a weird thing. Well, how is that going to make it more enjoyable for them? But what you are doing is telling them, I'm in control here, there's no point you fighting, so I'm going to get done what I need to do, and then you can put your foot down. Because if they pull away once, you'll find that they then are like, oh, okay, if I keep on pulling, I get my foot back and she doesn't do what she was going to do. And that is just a constant cycle then of every time you pick the foot up, they pull it away. They pick the foot up, they pull it away. But if you can be firm and hold on to it, even though it's quite hard, especially if you're a sappy person like me about your dog, it's quite hard to do that because you know that they want their foot back. But if you can be firm, it will give them confidence, and they will surrender, if you like. I don't mean surrender as in the way of, you know, I'm overpowering you or anything like that. I just mean in giving them confidence that, okay, this is going to happen. I need to put the trust in the person that's doing it and surrender to it that way, and give them confidence. That leads nicely on to feeling calm and confident, and making sure that you feel in the right mood when you're doing the grooming, especially if you're in the beginnings of doing it and you know, are learning. Don't go and do the grooming if you're feeling upset about anything, if you are feeling angry about anything, because your dog will pick up on that emotion. I'm sure you've heard it before, but they do read us and they can feel that. And if you're feeling tense, they will feel tense. If you're feeling upset, they will feel anxious. You know, it transfers. And so make sure that you're in the right mood before you do it. And if you're not in the right mood, put it off to another time. Be gentle, of course. course. You know, don't be rough with them, don't get angry with them. Try to keep your impatience to yourself if possible. You know, they are just they're just using their natural survival techniques to avoid something that could well be harmful. And the more they get used to it, the better they'll be. Don't feel like you have to do this in one day. I don't do Watson in one day, and you know, I did have to obviously do the dogs in one day when I was grooming. I would do 2 in one day, but he's a long-haired dog that you can hear barking. Sorry about that, he was barking at a cat. Yeah, he's a long-haired dog, and it would take me too long and be too hard on my joints to do it all in one sitting. So I will tend to do his body on one day, because you'd be surprised, you can do the body, leave the legs long, and it doesn't look that odd. It looks fairly balanced. And so I'll do the body on one day, the legs and face on another day, washing the day before, brushing one morning, you know, something like that. It doesn't all have to be done in one day. And the final thing to tell you about is to use this if you've got a dog that's nervous or anxious. This is great. It's a Daptil. You may already know about it. It's called DAP. It's a hormone that's secreted by female dogs when they are lactating, and it's something that's very soothing to dogs. You can see I've used a lot of this. You just spray it in the room, and you need to wait 15 minutes before you take the dog in there for the alcohol to dissipate. But you can get this in a plug-in, you can get them on collars and all sorts of things. But this is best because it gives a big burst of the hormone, but you could also have a plug-in in the room of this, but just make sure that you switch it on and off because they can burn. Yeah, that's everything I have to tell you. I hope that you found those tips helpful. Let me know if you've got any other tips for other people to read in the comments, and how you get on. I'd love to know how you get on if you groom your dog at home. I do have some videos up on this channel about grooming the face, the tail. No, actually I haven't done the tail yet. That's on my list to do, but I've got the feet, I've got the body, I've got the head and face. And I'm working on a course, actually an online course for teaching yourself to groom at home, and that includes coat types and styling and all of that. But I'd love to know if you do it at home and how you get on, and thank you so much for watching. I'll speak to you again soon.